Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Sandy ran her fingers through her boyfriend's damp locks. She'd begged him for weeks to let her practice her styling skills on him, and he'd finally relented. "Hold still," she murmured, concentrating intensely as she sectioned off pieces of hair. "I promise I won't do anything too crazy." He chuckled nervously. "That's what you said last time you trimmed my beard. I ended up looking like a lumberjack who got in a fight with a weed whacker." Sandy swatted his shoulder playfully. "Hey, I've improved a lot since then. Beauty school's been really helpful." She paused, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "You trust me, right?" There was a beat of silence before he nodded. "Of course I do. Work your magic." Over the next hour, Sandy carefully styled his hair, explaining each step as she went along. She started simple, just a basic trim and style, but as the weeks went by, her techniques grew bolder. She experimented with highlights, then lowlights, gradually lightening his brown hair to a softer, more golden hue. "I think this color really brings out your eyes," she mused one evening, running her fingers through his freshly washed hair. "What do you think about going even lighter? Maybe some face-framing pieces?" He hesitated, studying his reflection. The changes had been so gradual he'd hardly noticed how different he looked. But now, seeing the softer lines of his face, the way the golden tones complemented his skin, he had to admit he liked it. "Why not?" he grinned. "In for a penny, in for a pound, right?" Sandy squealed with delight, planting a kiss on his cheek. "You're the best. Just wait. You're going to look amazing." As Sandy's skills improved, so did her ambition. She began styling his hair in increasingly feminine ways. Soft waves, face-framing layers, even experimenting with updos and braids. At first, he felt self-conscious leaving the house, but Sandy's enthusiasm was infectious, and he found himself enjoying the process more and more. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as Sandy worked on an intricate French braid, she broached a new topic. "So, I've been thinking, how would you feel about maybe trying some makeup?" He blinked, surprised. "Makeup? I don't know." "Nothing crazy," she assured him quickly. "Just maybe some subtle eyeliner, a little mascara. It would really make your eyes pop." He considered for a moment. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. I guess we could try it, just to see." Sandy's face lit up. "Really? Oh, this is going to be so much fun." That afternoon marked a turning point. What had started as simple hairstyling practice evolved into full-blown makeovers. Sandy experimented with contouring, highlighting, even false lashes. She painted his nails in soft, neutral shades that gradually became bolder and more colorful. As the weeks turned into months, he found himself looking forward to their makeover sessions more and more. There was something freeing about shedding his masculine persona, if only for a few hours. "You know," Sandy said one day as she carefully applied a shimmery eyeshadow, "you make a really pretty girl." He laughed, but there was an undercurrent of nervousness in his voice. "Thanks, I think." Sandy set down the makeup brush, her expression serious. "I mean it, you seem happier like this, more relaxed." He swallowed hard, unable to meet her gaze. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she said softly. "I just want you to know that whatever you're feeling, whatever you want to explore, I'm here for you." That night, as he lay in bed, her words echoed in his mind. He thought about how natural it felt to wear makeup, how much he enjoyed the feeling of soft, styled hair brushing against his neck. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine what it might be like to live as a woman full-time. The next morning, he approached Sandy with trepidation. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday." She looked up from her coffee, eyebrows raised. "Oh," he took a deep breath. "I want to try more, not just makeup and hair. I want to see what it's like to really live as a woman, even if it's just for a day or two." Sandy's face broke into a wide smile. "Are you sure? That's a big step." He nodded, his heart racing. "I'm sure. Will you help me?" "Of course," she said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "We'll take it slow, okay? One step at a time." Over the next few weeks, Sandy helped him transform more fully into a woman. She taught him how to walk in heels, how to sit and stand with grace. They went shopping for feminine clothes, giggling like schoolgirls in the dressing room as he tried on skirts and dresses for the first time. One evening, as Sandy finished styling his now shoulder-length hair into soft waves, she asked, "Have you thought about a name? For when you're like this?" He bit his lip, considering. "I've always liked the name Molly." Sandy smiled. "Molly, I like it. It suits you." As Molly, he felt a sense of freedom he'd never experienced before. The world looked different through mascara-coated lashes. People treated him differently, holding doors open, offering compliments on his outfit or hair. But it wasn't all easy. The first time they went out in public with Molly fully dressed as a woman, he was terrified. His hands shook as he applied his lipstick, and he nearly backed out at the last minute. "We don't have to do this if you're not ready," Sandy said gently. Molly took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "No, I want to. I need to." They went to a small cafe across town, somewhere they were unlikely to run into anyone they knew. Molly's heart raced as they walked in, certain that everyone was staring, that they all knew her secret. But as they sat down and ordered their coffee, she slowly began to relax. No one was pointing or whispering. The barista had smiled and called her ma'am without hesitation. As they left the cafe, Sandy squeezed her hand. "You did it! How do you feel?" Molly grinned, a weight lifting off her shoulders. "I feel incredible. Like I can finally breathe." From that day on, Molly spent more and more time presenting as a woman. She began to wonder if this was more than just an experiment, if this was who she truly was. The decision to transition fully wasn't made lightly. Molly and Sandy spent countless nights talking it through, weighing the pros and cons, discussing the potential impact on their relationship and their lives. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Sandy asked one night, her voice soft in the darkness of their bedroom. Molly was quiet for a long moment. I think I've always known, deep down. I just never had the words for it, or the courage to admit it to myself." Sandy rolled over, propping herself up on one elbow. "And now? Now!" Molly took a deep breath. "Now I can't imagine going back. The thought of living the rest of my life as a man. It feels wrong, like trying to wear a suit that doesn't fit anymore." Sandy leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to Molly's forehead. "Then we'll do this together. Whatever you need, I'm here." The process of transitioning was both exhilarating and terrifying. There were doctor's appointments, hormone treatments, voice therapy sessions. Sandy was there every step of the way, holding Molly's hand through the triumphs and the setbacks. One of the hardest parts was coming out to friends and family. Molly's parents were shocked at first, struggling to understand. But as they saw how much happier and more confident their child was as Molly, they slowly came around. Friends were a mixed bag. Some were immediately supportive, while others drifted away. But Molly found a new community in support groups and online forums, connecting with others who understood exactly what she was going through. Work presented its own challenges. Molly had been at her job for years as her male self, and the thought of coming out to her colleagues was daunting. But with Sandy's encouragement, she set up a meeting with HR and her boss. To her surprise and relief, they were supportive. There was a plan put in place for her transition at work, including sensitivity training for her coworkers and updates to all her documentation. The day Molly came to work fully presenting as herself for the first time was nerve-wracking. She stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting her blouse for the 100th time. "You look beautiful," Sandy assured her, smoothing down a stray hair. "And more importantly, you look like you..." Molly took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Okay, I can do this. As she walked into the office, she braced herself for stares and whispers. But while there were a few double takes, most of her co-workers simply smiled and greeted her as they always had. Her boss stopped by her desk mid-morning. Everything going okay? Molly nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. Yes, thank you. Everyone's been really great. He smiled warmly. I'm glad to hear it. You seem happier, Molly. It suits you. As the months passed, Molly settled into her new life. There were still challenges, of course, the occasional misgendering, the struggle to find clothes that fit properly, the ongoing medical appointments. But every day she felt more and more like herself. 1 year to the day after she'd first asked Sandy to help her explore her feminine side, Molly stood in front of the mirror, marveling at how far she'd come. Her hair, now long and lush, fell in soft waves around her face. She wore a pretty sundress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Sandy came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Molly's waist. Happy anniversary, beautiful. Molly leaned back into her embrace, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sandy pressed a kiss to her shoulder. You did all the hard work. I just held the hairspray. Molly turned in her arms, cupping Sandy's face gently. You did so much more than that. You saw me, the real me, before I even knew who I was. I just want you to be happy, Sandy said softly. Molly smiled, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I am happier than I've ever been. As they headed out to celebrate, hand in hand, Molly reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. It hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly, completely herself. The woman she saw in the mirror now wasn't just a reflection, it was her truest self, finally set free. And with Sandy by her side, she was ready to face whatever the future held, secure in the knowledge that she was living as her authentic self. As they walked down the street, Molly caught her reflection in a store window. Glancing at their reflection in a shop window, Molly marveled at the confident woman she'd become. Her chestnut hair, now cascading past her shoulders in soft waves, framed a face that radiated happiness. The emerald green sundress she wore hugged her curves in all the right places, a far cry from the ill-fitting men's clothes she'd once hidden behind. Penny for your thoughts? Sandy's voice pulled Molly from her reverie. Just thinking about how much has changed, Molly replied, giving Sandy's hand a gentle squeeze. How much I've changed. Sandy's lips curved into a warm smile. You haven't changed, love. You've just become more you. The words settled over Molly like a comforting blanket, and she felt a familiar rush of gratitude for the woman beside her. Sandy had been her rock throughout this journey, unwavering in her support even when Molly herself had faltered. As they approached their favorite restaurant, a quaint Italian place where they'd shared countless meals and memories, Molly's mind drifted back to the early days of her transition. The fear and uncertainty that had once gripped her heart seemed like distant echoes now, replaced by a deep sense of peace and self-assurance. The maitre d' greeted them warmly, leading them to a secluded corner table adorned with flickering candles. Your usual spot, ladies, he said with a wink, pulling out their chairs. Once seated, Sandy reached across the table, taking both of Molly's hands in hers. Happy anniversary, my love, she said softly, her eyes shining with emotion. Molly felt a lump form in her throat. I still can't believe how lucky I am, she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Not just to have found myself, but to have found you. Sandy's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of Molly's hand. We found each other, she corrected gently. And I fall more in love with you every day. As they perused the menu, chatting and laughing, Molly couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The memory of her first tentative steps into womanhood flooded back, vivid and bittersweet. "Remember the first time we went out with me dressed as a woman?" Molly asked, a small chuckle escaping her lips. Sandy's eyes crinkled with amusement. "How could I forget? You were so nervous you nearly wore a hole in the carpet pacing back and forth." "I was convinced everyone would see right through me," Molly admitted, shaking her head at her past self's fears. "But no one batted an eye. Because all they saw was a beautiful woman," Sandy said firmly, reaching out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind Molly's ear. "Just like I've always seen you." Their conversation was briefly interrupted as the waiter arrived to take their order. As he walked away, Molly found herself marveling at how natural it all felt now. The way the waiter had addressed her as ma'am without hesitation, the ease with which she navigated the world as her true self, it was a far cry from the anxiety-ridden outings of her early transition. "I was thinking about work earlier," Molly said as she sipped her wine, "about how terrified I was to come out to everyone." Sandy nodded, her expression softening with the memory. "You were so brave that day. I remember how your hands shook as you got dressed." "I was sure I'd be met with disgust or ridicule," Molly admitted. "But everyone was so kind, supportive even. Because they could see how much happier you were," Sandy pointed out. "How could anyone begrudge you that?" As their meal arrived, the conversation flowed easily between them, touching on memories both bitter and sweet. They reminisced about the first time Molly had worn a dress in public, the triumph of her first successful makeup application, the tears of joy when her hormone therapy began to show visible results. "It hasn't all been easy," Molly acknowledged as she twirled pasta around her fork. "There have been some really tough moments." Sandy reached across the table, her fingers brushing Molly's cheek. "But you've faced every challenge with such grace and strength. I'm in awe of you, you know that?" Molly leaned into Sandy's touch, feeling a familiar warmth bloom in her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. "You've been my anchor through all of this." As they finished their meal and declined dessert in favor of a moonlit walk, Molly found herself overwhelmed with emotion. Stepping out into the cool night air, she pulled Sandy close, their bodies fitting together perfectly. "Thank you," Molly whispered, her lips brushing Sandy's ear. "For seeing me, for loving me, for everything." Sandy pulled back slightly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I'll spend the rest of my life doing just that, if you'll let me." As they walked hand in hand through the city streets, Molly felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey to self-discovery had been long and often difficult, but standing here now, she knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The woman she saw reflected in shop windows and puddles was no longer a stranger or a disguise. She was Molly in all her authentic, beautiful truth. And with Sandy by her side, she was ready to embrace whatever the future might hold, secure in the knowledge that she was living her most genuine life. As they rounded the corner towards their apartment, Sandy suddenly stopped, tugging gently on Molly's hand. "Wait," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I have something for you." Molly raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Oh?" Sandy reached into her purse, pulling out a small velvet box. Molly's breath caught in her throat as Sandy slowly lowered herself to one knee. "Molly," Sandy began, her voice trembling slightly. "This past year has been the most beautiful, challenging, and rewarding experience of my life. Watching you blossom into the woman you've always been has been an honor and a privilege. I fall more in love with you every day, and I want to spend the rest of my life by your side." She opened the box, revealing a delicate diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Molly's cheeks as she nodded emphatically. "Yes," she managed to choke out. 1,000 times yes." As Sandy slipped the ring onto her finger, Molly felt as though her heart might burst with joy. This was more than just a proposal. It was an affirmation of her journey, a promise of a future filled with love and acceptance. They shared a deep, tender kiss, oblivious to the handful of passers-by who smiled and offered congratulations. In that moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, two women in love, ready to face whatever life might bring together. As they eventually made their way home, hand in hand, Molly caught sight of their reflection in a darkened storefront. She saw two radiant women, their faces etched with joy and love. And for the first time in her life, the reflection she saw matched perfectly with the person she knew herself to be. Molly smiled, squeezing Sandy's hand. The journey had been long and often difficult, but standing here now, she knew it had all been worth it. She was home, not just in the physical sense, but in her own skin, in her relationship, in her life. And with Sandy by her side, she was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.